Good morning, everyone. I'm really glad that this session is happening at CNU, and it's fun to be invited to participate. So we appreciate it on behalf of the Council for Canadian Urbanism. Do we have Canadians in the audience? Okay, great. Presumably some of you came to our session yesterday. This is our bragging slide. We are doing things well in Canada. We have 3 of the top 5 most livable cities in the world, if you believe The Economist magazine. The Australians are also doing well. Together we have 7 out of the top 10. We're also ranked routinely as some of the most resilient cities, most greenest cities, best cities for youth, etc. Our organization is only officially since 2009. We've been around for about 10 years before that. Last year at our summit, our Congress, we signed our Charter for Canadian Urbanism. As you can see clearly by reading it, it has a lot of the same kinds of principles as both the CNU Charter and also your Hippocratic Oath, so I enjoyed that. We're often defined in Canada by how we're different from the United States, and our urbanism evolved over time. Its historical context, a different constitutional structure, political, social, cultural, etc. So there are big differences between Canada and the United States that have found their way into our approach to urbanism. We've worked very hard to avoid some of what we consider the distracting and polarizing debates around architectural style. We're comfortable with contemporary architecture. We're comfortable with density. We've particularly been emphasizing green urbanism and sustainable urbanism before CNU was really pushing that, thanks to Doug Farr. We have much higher transit usage in Canada than in the United States, fewer expressway miles per capita. We just built fewer expressways. Our urbanism is naturally affected by a cold climate, though not all of our country is igloos and snowstorms. And an interesting fact that my colleague David Gordon likes to point is that we're very close to nature in the wilderness at all times, and that affects our perspective of living in cities and loving urbanism, but also loving getting out of urbanism. We're very multicultural, some of the most multicultural cities in the world, and our CBDs were never really weakened. We didn't have a lot of the devastating weaknesses that happened in the United States. I'm just going to show you a few slides because we do a coast to coast. One of our strong things we do is cities helping other Canadian cities. So constantly we're doing a coast to coast best practices urbanism every year at our summit and throughout the year. So yesterday we presented our coast to coast, the best things happening in Montreal, particularly around urban cycling, some of the huge public realm and open space master planning approaches in Quebec City, for example, the Belle-Provence. For our French counterparts or our French participants in Canada. It's a few times I don't need my whole time. We in Ottawa, our nation's capital, doing great things great things, frankly. They're starting to do better things around TOD, particularly bus rapid transit. But that city has struggled. We're trying to get a foothold in transit. Some cities in Canada are doing better than others in terms of TOD and transit investment. A number of our cities are actually paralyzed in transit debates right now on how to fund them. We've got a lot of best practices. We actually Toronto hosted CNU back in 1997 because of all the new urbanist projects that were happening in the suburban periphery around Toronto, the Greater Toronto area. This is Calgary, which is increasingly the it city in Western Canada, that went from being the most right-wing conservative city in Canada, at least by Canadian standards, to being a hotbed for urban design and architecture. That's a Calatrava Bridge, and a lot of great projects and developments, both in inner city infill and greenfields developments. And one of the things they just did was approve a pilot for an entire cycle track system within their downtown, instead of doing it one at a time, like unfortunately many cities, including my city of Vancouver, has done. So they showed real boldness in a city that's known as a car city, but in fact a city that does great things with transit, etc. So in my city, in Vancouver, and I actually used to be a former planner in Calgary, but my most recent job was chief planner in Vancouver. This is the kind of transformation that we've had in Vancouver. Not every Canadian city grows this fast, but frankly, we've had a very strong, stable market. We rode out the global recession better than most of the world, and Vancouver better than just about any city in at least North America. That's the kind of transformation that we've had in Vancouver in our downtown in just 2 decades, one generation. And really, although you can see clearly contemporary architecture, architecture and such. The quality of the urbanism is what particularly gives Vancouver its international reputation as a quote-unquote city by design. The most important decision Vancouver ever made in terms of urban design is a transportation decision. We don't balance modes, we prioritize. Walking first, then biking, then transit, then goods movement, and then the car. And we've proved through the data that that actually works better for everyone, including drivers. So we dispel this myth of the war on the car that is so prevalent in North America. We celebrate our best practices, and as you can see, we do a lot of different forms of density other than towers. Frankly, our towers get too much attention. But what we stress is we have no dogma about scale, but every scale needs to be designed well. This is our Olympic Village for the Winter Olympics in 2010, named by the U.S. Green Building Council as the greenest community in North America based on LEED ND points. But you see, we're doing lots of scales, including laneway housing, which we approved in 2009, and we have over 1,200 units approved across the city in just a couple of years. Mid-rise, townhouses, row houses, what we call gentle, hidden and invisible densities, on how you can integrate ground-oriented density within your communities and double and triple and quadruple the population. We're doing more transit-oriented development than any other place in North America, as Ellen Dunham-Jones often points out. This is just one of our transit stations that's that was a suburban shopping mall next to the transit station, and now, as you can see, density, use mix, and place established that in a very transit-oriented pattern. This is moving away from Vancouver. This is our other major BC city, Victoria, and this is Dockside Green, a project you might really want to look at. This is the second greenest community in North America by LEED ND points. So BC has the top two in North America in terms of LEED ND.